Hey guys, so I'm going to look at using Roadkill and the Max Unwrap tools to get this guy unwrapped. This is a wrestler type character, fairly low poly. He's running in at around 740 polygons, a little bit more, probably about 1,000 tries, give or take. He's got a lot of quads all over him, and bringing quads inside of Roadkill is going to help with the unwrap, as you're going to find out, just because it likes doing the edge loops, and edge loops work better with quads. In a couple cases he's got some triangles here and there. You know what, we can still take care of that. That's not a big deal at all. So what I want to do is select him and get him ready for unwrap. So there's usually a few things that I need to do before I export him as an OBJ to bring that into Roadkill. I always go up to the Utilities tab, Reset Xform, okay, and then just right-click, Collapse All. And that kind of just cleans the history, makes it a little bit nicer mesh to work with, gets rid of maybe a few errors, saying that this is the original shape now because I've reset that Xform. There's no history in there, no scaling issues. So, let me just change this to mesh. So we've got a name on here. I'm going to select that and export selected. And I'm going to type in, let's see here, Wrestler 1, because I've already done Wrestler beforehand. Okay, so that's exported as an OBJ. Oh, sorry, I was exporting as an FBX. Let me reset that here. Export selected as an OBJ. There we go. Wrestler. Yes, I'll replace that. Okay, done. So that's done. I'm going to go over and open up Roadkill. I've already got one in there that I had unwrapped before, so let me just update this. So there's one with a really bad UV. Okay, so we're not going to actually use this type of UV for any type of texturing purposes. What we need to do is figure out how to use Roadkill. So there's a few things in here. For the most part, I don't use it a lot for the actual UVs, because you can get in and start moving around and relaxing and pinning and everything else. I really simply use this for cutting and welding of edges and the automatic relax that Roadkill does. You're going to find out. If you've never used it, well, you're going to see what happens now. First off, you can see that he's got some colors on him. He's 3 different colors, or you know, it mixes in between, mainly red, blue, or green. Green is good, red is bad, and blue is kind of bad, but for the most part it's not as bad as red. So what green is going to get you is basically an overall decent resolution. So you've got a good resolution of pixels. Red is going to be compressed pixel data, so you don't have enough pixel data in that area. And blue is going to be over resolution, so you're going to have more pixels in that area than you actually need. So really what we want to try and do is have green on everything. And so let's start off here. So we're going to go to edge mode. We've got, really, these are some of the only keys that you're going to have to worry about. These 3 keys, E, C, and W. So get familiar where they are on your keyboard. So I'm going to hit E for selecting edge. And you can see I can drag a box in either window. This one or this one. So if I go ahead and, let's say we look around in this window here, I'm going to double click right on his head, right in the middle. Double click that edge, and you can see how it goes around or through most of the head, and then down, and then it stops. It's because we've got a triangle here. Okay, if this was quads all the way down, we didn't have this triangle right here, we'd have this edge, or this edge that would go all the way through. So I'm just going to Control select and get rid of that one selection and hit C to cut. You can already see what's happening here. So let me go through and double click on his chest to select this other edge loop. You can see how it's gone up here. I'm going to control and drag over top of that just to deselect it. I'm going to go around to the back, and notice that this edge has gone all the way up through the crotch and up the spine, and actually it's lined up right to the top of his back, shoulder blades. So I'm going to hit cut, C. There we go, we've got this guy cut in half. So you can already see that the red is still a really bad area. That's going to be all the kind of condensed pixel area, and that's because it's right here. If we zoom in on that, you can see that, you know, this is where actually the fingers are, or the fist. It's this tiny little spot. Okay, so we'll need to be able to cut those arms off and deal with them a little bit later. Okay, and then you can see this is where the head is, but the head is much larger pixel resolution than everything else. That's why it's blue. Okay, and just so you know, there is another spot. This is under textures, show stretch. You could always do color numbers, and you could always do checker. Okay, I find that stretch is the most useful for what I do, at least. So next, let's cut the limbs off. So I'm going to find a nice spot here in the leg. I'm going to go right there. C to cut. I do on both sides. C to cut. There's my legs. Now remember, I just cut the top part off. I need to split it all the way down the sides, but before I do that, I'm going to cut it off at the ankle as well. Double click, C. Double click, C. So I'm just cutting. There's my feet. Okay, there's the legs. So where's a good spot to unwrap this for the legs? Well, you don't want to unwrap right down the middle on the front, because that's the most recognizable or the most noticeable spot on these legs. So there's, you know, some people would do the back, but if it's a third-person camera, then you're going to see the back just as much as the front. So I'd probably go down the middle of the inside, or the interior of the leg. So if we double click on that edge, it's going to go right across. It's also going to hit right across the crotch area. We can always clean that up after. But notice where it goes on the feet. It kind of goes down and around the ankles and up the back and then up the side and all the way around. Okay, so just notice that it's going basically almost over throughout this entire model. So we don't necessarily need all of that. Okay, so we can control and drag a box around some of the stuff that we just don't need. Okay, so there we go. And we can even get rid of that stuff. Then I hit C. And there's my legs unwrapped. As easy as that. Look at the legs on here now, they're very green. That's what we want, right? We want green mesh. Let's see here, arms. Where should we cut the arms off? What's going to make the most sense? Probably around that area. So if I double click that loop, let's see where it's going to give me. That's going to be a perfect spot for it. C. Do the same on this side. Oh, now that's an interesting thing. Sometimes you've got to be careful where you cut, because even though I selected the same, like an edge within this loop that worked, because I've selected a different spot, it's taking a slightly different path. So if I select here, you can see it's taking this path. If I select here, it's taking that path. Okay, so you gotta be careful where you select things. So I'm gonna hit C to cut. Here's my torso. Awesome. Got a big hole where my arm is. Got a hole where the leg is. Everything else is pretty much green. This little bit of bluish green isn't so bad on here. Don't worry about that type of stuff. That's perfectly fine. And you can see how this is getting a little bit orange in here. That's also perfectly fine. Later on, we're going to bring this back inside of Max and just give this a little bit more of a relax. But overall, this would be pretty good to unwrap, aside from the ridiculous huge texture seam right down the middle of the head. Now, if we did this as a symmetrical model, we might want to keep it like this and then overlap this side of the UVs. But you know what? We're gonna just make this guy more of an asymmetrical model, or unwrap, so we can weld things right down the middle. And let's do that right now. I'm gonna take the face, hit weld. Okay, so there's the face. You can see this is rotated on its side, -90 degrees. Let's select more of the chest area. Notice when I select it in the right window, it's also highlighting in the left window, so it allows you to see where you're selecting really easily. So I'm going to take that, hit W, W again, so we've got maybe some of the belly, and go a little bit further down, about here. So that's right about where the crotch is, and I think that's going to be pretty good because we've got no seam going down the middle of the body now. Okay. We do have a big seam up the back, right? So I'm going to show you maybe a slightly different way to unwrap this, because again, if we're making a third-person game, now we've got a seam that runs right down the back of our character. Not really the greatest option. So instead of unwrapping it down the back with these armholes, almost like a vest, let's unwrap it more like a poncho, where it's split down the sides on both sides. Okay, so we won't have a seam down the back or the front. We're just going to have two minimal seams down the insides of the body. So that's going to be fairly unnoticeable. So let's do this. Find this spot, double click. Notice where it's going, and maybe deselect some of these areas just so you don't have crazy amounts of cuts all over the place. You can also notice on here, that's where I've got selected, and anywhere else I could simply just hold down Control and select the rest of my model out here. So when I hit C, it cuts this area. Now what about the bottom? That's where I have to make a spot across the crotch. So let's find where that is. So that's there on the crotch. It's right there. So I can hit C, cut, 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 cut. So I just cut each one of those individually. Let's do the same to the other side. Okay, so here's my leg hole. I've got that one. I can hold down Shift if I want and select more than one and hit C to cut. I've got this little open edge here, which is the front part of my crotch here, so I'm going to weld that up. Okay, let's look at this side. Double click that. Control select to deselect areas. And just double check that you have nothing else. There we go. So we've only got that area. If I hit C, cut, and I've got lots of nice green all over the place. We've got this really strange looking spread here at the back. Well, let's take all of that stuff and start welding it up. So I'm going to grab that, hit W. Okay, and I've got more of the back here, which I'm going to weld there. Now, what do we have? Well, we've got this kind of strange looking torso, butt, back area. The biggest red area is going to be his head, so you know what? I'm going to cut that right out. There we go. Double click in there and hit C. That looks a bit better. Still looks a bit off, but we can change that later on. And I'm going to take his head. Let's see here. I could probably use it as it is and then, you know, just stretch out some of those UVs. Or I could always see how it looks like if I start cutting this a little bit more. Okay, you could always cut it something like that. Maybe you go one extra here. Maybe weld that up. So that's not so bad. You really want to try and minimize the number of welds. So maybe let's just take the top here, weld that up. Okay. Quickly put the arms and legs. I'm going to do one on each side because I'm not going to bother with doing each one individually. I'm just going to later on in Max, I'm going to take that and duplicate over to the other side. So I'm going to just unwrap one side on each. So I'm going to take this arm, take the wrist, cut. Take the inside of the arm. And I'm going to hold down Shift and just select a few of these. Yeah, sure. Cut that. Now I'll just fix up a couple of these little misplaced cuts. There's my arm. That's my arm unwrapped. Okay? Now let's look at this hand. The hand's a little bit strange because it's more of a block. I figured out a way to make this unwrap nicely. So let's take it. Let's see, I'm just taking a quick figure out here. Let's go that way. Is that gonna do it for me? No, I don't like that at all. I'm gonna just split it right in half. So I'm gonna cut this. I'll split it in half to start with. I think this is my hand here. Yeah, that's the hand there. So, how about I split it right down where the thumb is? That's probably going to make a bit more sense, because we can hide that seam a little bit easier. If we put a seam where there's a piece of geometry that actually is a natural seam, it's going to work better for us. Okay, so we've got this thumb off to the side. We've got the rest of the hand somewhat unwrapped. So that's going to be probably good enough for what we need. Just double checking here. Yeah, so I think that's going to be pretty good. Remember, blue isn't so bad. Red is not great, but we can bring red in and relax that a little bit more inside of Max. Now let's look at these shoes here. So this should be pretty quick. I'm going to double click along that edge and hit cut. And almost instantly it's already unwrapped. That's because we had a side already cut at the back. Let's find that over here. So that's the sole of my shoe. And that's my shoe. They're not very symmetrical. So I actually want it to be cut down the back. So you can see that's where the cut is here. So I'm going to just take that, cut that and that, and then I'm going to find this one, hit W, so popped it back in, W, W, there we go. You could weld these up together at the back. You can see what it's going to give you, lots of red. So if we cut that back piece, it's fairly green, and the seam is at the back. It's kind of a good spot for it. Okay, so we've got this all unwrapped. One thing a lot of people do is they cut off the torso, kind of right in the middle where there might be pants. Sometimes that's not a bad idea. And if we select around the waist and hit cut, and maybe up through here, cut. And you can see, I might just notice something like this where it's a little cut and it's not really supposed to be there. Just select it and hit W. Oh, it's not exactly what I want to select. Okay, so I'll select that cut, W, so that'll weld that up. Still not crazy about the look of what's happening here, but I think we'll bring that over anyway as it is. Okay, let me find the pants here. So where do we have the pants? Looks like this area here. Let's see what happens if I weld up one of these sides of the pants, or maybe even both sides of the pants. Yeah, so we get this really strange looking piece. So again, there's lots of different ways that you can unwrap this stuff. Maybe we want to keep the back as it is here, but then for the pants we could possibly unwrap it down the side, or sorry, down the back and middle. So really it's going to depend on you which way you want to do this. Okay, so I've just unwrapped it right up the back. I'm going to weld these couple little errors. Okay, now it's really nice and green. Pretty easy for us to figure out what's going on. Okay, I'm almost ready to bring this back into max and delete some of the unnecessary stuff. One thing that I want you to make sure that you realize is here, there's this thing called LSCM switch. And if you try turning that on, you can see how it's got a little bit different relaxing algorithm. Changes up the way that it positions and packs the UVs, how it relaxes and stretches the UVs out. So what I've been finding is that by turning off LSCM, it works a bit better for organic objects. By turning it on, it works a little bit better for non-organic, like if I was making a desk or an entertainment unit or even a car or something along those lines where it's more structured. But anything that's like a character that's a very complex organic type of shape, I find that turning this off is better for you. Okay, so let me just save this, minimize it, and I'm going to delete this old one, and let's say import. We're going to import OBJ. You can really just find it from the last one on the list here. Okay, so there we go. Notice it renamed it to Roadkill Out. You can leave it as that if you like, but maybe I'll just type in wrestler. One thing, also notice that it came in as an editable mesh. Okay. There's also another issue with Roadkill, and what that's going to do is it's going to somewhat lock your smoothing groups. So what you always need to do every time you use Roadkill and import it, put a modifier on that's called Edit Poly. Okay, so that Edit Poly modifier is going to unlock your smoothing groups. So when that's like that, just now collapse all. It's going to be an editable poly. Big difference between Edit Poly and Editable Poly. Okay, one's a modifier and one's an actual object. They both have similar modeling functions and tools, except by just collapsing it to an editable poly won't fix the smoothing group problem that you have when you come in from Roadkill. Putting an putting an edit poly modifier on it will fix the smoothing group issues. So now that we've done that, you could always go in here and reset the X form just to be on the safe side. It never hurts. So I'm going to go under modifier with this object selected and hit Unwrap UVW and open the UV editor, and I can notice that I've got the same unwrap that was in there. Okay, I just really wanted to double check that first. So some of the areas that I didn't really want, let's see here. Didn't quite care about that arm. I'm going to move that out of the way. I wanted that arm. I wanted that piece. Let's just move this stuff over here. Okay, I want that piece. I want that piece. And that piece, that's part of the arm. That's part of the head, of the torso, and that's the butt. And that's a foot that I didn't unwrap. You can see the difference between the feet. This is bad foot, this is good foot. So we'll get rid of bad foot, good foot, good sole. It's got good sole. And then it looks like both legs. I don't necessarily need both legs. This was the good foot, and this was the good leg. So there we go. So I've got the good leg selected. Now I did unwrap both legs, but I don't need them, so I'm just going to move this over here. Okay, so I'll leave that off here for now. And I'm going to move this stuff around. So we've got this moved into place, and we notice that it's just not very relaxed very well. So I'm going to go up to Tools, Relax, And looking at inside the relax tool here, we've got a couple of options that we can use. I typically use mostly polygon angles aside from edge angles, but you can try both just to see what they do. Let's try edge angles to start. Okay, and if I just Control Z and Control Y just to see the types of movement in the UVs. Okay, as opposed to polygon angles. You know, if I just move this out, I'll hit Start Relax and I'll see what happens. So it's going to move it a little bit better into place. Okay, let's try edge angles, Start Relax. See what's happening. It's kind of really freaking out on us a little bit here. There's different ways of unwrapping this. Okay, so it really depends on what you want. One thing that you can do is get a material on this guy. Let's put a material on him. So I've hit M to bring up my material editor. I'm going to apply material and diffuse, none. Let's find checker. Okay, so there we go. We got a checker on him. And let's increase the tiling to about 20 by 20. So there we go. Now you can see the tile. If you want to make that a little bit larger, it doesn't hurt. 30 by 30. So the arm looks pretty good. Okay, I don't really have much issues with that. We want to try and have squares. Okay, so you want to be careful of having things like that. Remember, this was the arm that we didn't unwrap. Okay, so there's huge issues with that. Same as the foot. Okay, there's no coverage on that. It's all stretched and it looks like crap. Overall, it looks pretty good. You can see that some of these are larger squares, meaning that there's actually larger pixels there. So we're going to get less resolution there. Okay. If we had an area like this, that's more resolution there. So we're going to have more detail in that area. That's also not. It's not what we really want either, because you wouldn't want to have that much detail right next to that little amount of detail. So it's something you have to think about. Okay, so let me move this back over. Give me a minute and I'm going to just relax this and get this a little bit nicer looking. Okay, so this looks a little bit better. Basically what I was doing was just going through and manually moving some of these around a little bit to line them up. And then when I get to a certain point that's somewhat lined up, I can just go in and apply the relax to a portion of this. So let's say this was over here, like so. I could just go in and apply just to that one single portion, maybe increase that portion a little bit, and like so. Okay, you can see the top's a little bit skewed here, so I can always just move this over and hit apply. You can see how it stretches and relaxes things a little bit more. Realize that you've also got a soft select in here that works quite well. So really, don't be happy with the first relax that you do. You can always get something that looks a little bit better. Also realize that you never ever use the Roadkill unwrap because the pack on it is just terrible. When all those elements are arranged from Roadkill, it just looks brutal. So just make sure that you bring it in and you use your artistic eye to move this into place. So let's take this head, bring that over, and we apply a relax to it. Okay, so there's a lot happening on this, so let's take a look and see what's really going on. So we've got some big squares in the front, little squares at the back. Our ideal situation is that we've got similar squares all over. Let's hit apply. Wow, so even just by doing that, it looks a lot better. I'll hit apply one more time. And you can see how it's moving a little bit more every time we go. So that looks pretty good. Okay. Now let's go in here and just double check for any overlaps. Overall, it looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. I'm going to leave it as it is. Let's find the leg. So we've got the leg here. Leg's gonna be pretty good as it is. Yeah, so you know what, the leg's fine. It's just a cylinder for the most part. Same as the foot. The foot's probably going to be fine. So let's see what it's doing. So we've got fairly small, fairly large. I hit apply, and it starts evening those out, and you can see the difference on here. How it stretches that foot a little bit more. So that's actually a lot better resolution all around. And if we change that to edge angles, you can see what's happening with it. It kind of busts it. So that's normally why I use polygon angles for the most part. Centers I don't use very often because it does really wacky things like that. You got to be careful on using center. For the most part, polygon angles, and I just hit apply. I don't very often. I don't use the relax here and just let it run. Okay, so there we go. We've got our foot should be fine the way it is. Yep. So you notice that I put all of my stuff on the outside, and when it's ready, I kind of bring it into the middle, just to know that, hey, that stuff I finished. Let's look at the shorts here. They're pretty decent. I'm just going to hit apply. See if that's going to help us at all. And it doesn't really do a whole lot of difference, but I'll keep the relax. And this is the hand. I'm not crazy about the way the hand is because we've got some very small squares, some very large squares. So I'll hit apply. Let's see how that's going to help it. Let's see if it's really busting this up. So you can see these polygons here are quite large. When I hit apply, it makes them smaller. Okay, that's what we want because we want them to be basically the same size of mesh. We want the UVs to be a similar size. So I'll hit apply again a few times. Okay, maybe I'll try going in here on the actual knuckles. Hitting apply. We'll see what that's going to do. Same as on there. Okay, so I'm just stretching these out more on an individual basis. Try edge angles on this one. Select the whole element and try edge angles on it. Yeah, it's a kind of a screwy object, right? So we'll make do with what we've got. This isn't an ideal situation. You know, maybe just relax this a little bit more, something more or less like that, and I'll be happy with that. Okay, now looking at him overall, most of the squares look pretty similar in size. That's what we're looking for. Oh yeah, I forgot just the arm here. The arm I'm sure is going to be fine. I can hit apply and see how that changes some of the squares. I'm looking on here mainly when I hit apply. I'm just undoing and redoing just to see the differences. So I like that one. If I go one more, there's a little bit of difference. So yeah, sure, I like that one in there. So I'm going to move those in. We're almost done here. Okay. Now I've got all the pieces I need. I'm going to unwrap this. Oh, sorry, unwrap. I'm going to pack this now into somewhat meaningful places. So we have to be efficient. Use all the area as much as we can. So let's see here. Let me close this down. Having an issue with my mouse all of a sudden. There we go. Okay, so just about had a bit of a hiccup with my video capture here. Hopefully we'll make it through the end of this. So let's move a couple of this stuff and a couple of these pieces into place, these elements. So try to make sure that they work properly for you. Move this maybe down to here. I'm going to roughly create a square. Give or take. We'll see here. I can always move this stuff around afterwards. And once I've got it, hold down Control and it scales it up proportionally. So I've got a lot of extra space here, so let's just see. What's my biggest element? Well, that's going to be this piece here. So if I scale that up, obviously stuff isn't going to fit. So I've got to scale it down a little bit. So maybe to about right here. Because if I scale it down that much, that means I can move this out of the way and maybe move this in to that area. And I don't want to keep my arm on the side, so I want to have my arm basically vertical. Makes more sense for texturing. My head is straight up and down. This is the fist. Move that kind of into place here. This is the leg. I don't know where I'm going to put that yet. I'm going to figure out what I want to do with the shorts here, because they're kind of big. So let's rotate them around a bit. Is that going to fit? You know what? I bet if I move this down and this up a little bit, that's going to fit right in there pretty nicely. Okay. And that can move there. It's kind of like playing the world's worst game the world's worst puzzle. It's just putting all these pieces together that don't really fit together. It's kind of torture for people that are very anal retentive, because people just want to make this stuff perfect. It doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. It just has to work. Okay, you want to try to make it the most efficient unwrap that you can, and really that's what it's all about. Okay, that works at that angle. Now this one, you might hear my computer beeping at me because I've got a really faulty mouse right now. It's my old 13-year-old mouse here. I'm just kind of lazy to change it out. There we go. Legs, I don't know, somewhere up here, just off the feet to add in. We've got lots of room up at the top here. Okay, now what can we do? Can we increase the size of anything? I guess we could. We could always increase the size of the feet overall, just to take up a bit of this extra room. It's not really going to help because normally the feet aren't what you look at. You look at the head. So the head could use a little bit more room. We're kind of running out of it. Let me see what happens if I turn these upside down. Okay, and if I move this down a little bit more. Somewhat like that. I could always just, increase the scaling on that a little bit. Adds a little bit more resolution to our head. Okay, and overall that's not so bad. Now, what about these pieces? Just to kind of finish this off. Well, let's go in here. I'm going to close this window down. Collapse all. Select my polygons. Grow, grow, grow all the way up until it's the bad part here. Okay, so that's all the bad part. This is the good part. And hit delete. There we go. Do the same for the leg. I think that's, yep, so that's where it is there. Delete that. Now, you can always do this a couple different ways. I'm simply going to hit mirror. Sorry. Yeah, mirror, copy. So I've got a new one. I'm going to select this new one and select the arms and leg just grow that one more time. I'm going to go down here and just get rid of that. So really all I'm doing is selecting it from the new body. Hit Control I and delete. So what I've got left over is one arm and one leg in the right spot. Oh, and I've got one extra polygon in there, which I don't want to have. Always a good idea to double check exactly what you've got. Select my old mesh, hit attach the new mesh to it, select verts, and you can select the whole thing or you can just select that one area. So for example, if I select this one area and I look at the amount of verts I have selected, somewhere in here, there it is, 2 verts selected. So if I hit weld option box, you can see that it's welded one of those in there. So I only have, I'm minus 1 vert now. So let's go ahead and just select all the verts and hit weld option box, hit OK. So it's going to weld up all those verts that are overlapping each other. And there we go, we've got an unwrapped guy. Okay, so he's unwrapped. A pretty decent way to unwrap it. Okay, let's just double check in here, the unwrap modifier again. And we'll open the editor, if I can find it. There we go. Okay, notice that we don't have those old UVs that were really bad now, we're just left with the good ones. At this point, just to finish it off, I'd then bring this into Photoshop by hitting Tools, Render UVW Template, figuring out my actual aspect ratio for my image that I want to create. There we go. And I could save this as whatever type of image format I wanted, and then use that as a UV overlay inside of Photoshop. It's going to be my guidelines for texturing. Okay, so that's a really kind of easy, quick way to unwrap a character. Had I not been explaining this, I probably could have had it unwrapped in 15 or 20 minutes instead of 42-ish. Okay, so the more you get used to using the Roadkill tool, and I'll tell you right now, it's really, really quick. Not that some of the Max tools aren't quick as well, but you know what? I just really wish Roadkill was incorporated into Max. Anyhow, thanks for watching.